authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. Listeners, where no topic is taboo, listener-supported radio, and with your help, it will stay that way. And today, my name's Royce, the Redneck Radio Man. Pardon me, folks. My mind got a little blown right before the show, and now I'm sticking my foot in it. But getting down to the part of the show here. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Ross Heaven, and we're going to be discussing his book, Shamanic Quest for the Spirit of Salvia. But before we get involved into this here, I'd like to remind everybody, if you'd like to ask questions, the call-in numbers 832-632-7904. And also, if you want to learn more about Ross and his books, or his book, you can go to www.thefourgates.org. So, Ross, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, thanks. Yeah, I'm over here in Spain at the moment. We got some workshops starting with plant medicines in about a week's time, so I'm just kicking back and taking it easy for a week. I've got some paella on the oven cooking, and I got a glass of beer in front of me, so I'm good to go.
Okay. Well, listen, I got to tell you, that was kind of a unique title on your book when I saw it, Spirit of Salvia. I had not heard of that before, but while reading the description, I come to discover that this is a form of plant. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's actually part of the mint family, but the shamans who use it refer to it as sage. But it's not. It's part of the mint family. And it grows in a particular part of Mexico where I was just a couple of months ago in ceremonies there with the plant. And I suppose, you know, we in the West would say it's a hallucinogenic plant. But it's a visionary plant, really. It's a medicine plant. And like other plants, like San Pedro or ayahuasca, it will help to open you up to, I don't know, let's say greater awareness, at least a greater understanding of yourself and why you might have an illness. Because, I can go on, you know, the Western approach to medicine is they give you a tablet to cure the symptoms of what is wrong with you, or, you know, claim to cure the symptoms. Half the time they don't. But they don't really get to the root cause of the problem. Now, a plant like salvia can cure the symptoms of whatever it is that you might have a problem with, and it's known to be good for things like addictions and some brain disorders and some forms of cancer and AIDS as well. There's a lot of targets for it, medical targets. But it's also a teacher plant, so it can show you what it was that caused you to get ill in the first place, because these things are hardly ever just physical breakdowns. They usually also have a mental or an emotional component as well. And unless you get to the bottom of that, you're just going to get ill again. So it's a plant that's been used for a long time among the shamans of Mexico for healing on all sorts of levels. That's what it is.
Okay, so is it still used today, or has that been kind of outlawed like it is here in America?
No, most places in the world are a lot more sensible and wise than America. I'm over here in Spain, as I said, and ayahuasca, which is a jungle vine, a different plant, is illegal or going that way in most parts of the world. It's certainly illegal in America and Australia. But over here, there was a test case just last year, actually, where they wanted to prosecute somebody who had this particular form of medicine, and it went to court, and the judge said, no way, we're throwing it out. So ayahuasca over here is quite legal, and so are the other plants as well. In Mexico, salvia is regarded as a great teacher plant. It's a sacred plant, so it's almost a protected species over there. But the shamans, funny enough, don't use it that much. Actually, they prefer mushrooms. You know, psilocybin mushrooms. The Mexican version of that. That's their main healing plant. So I was in ceremonies with mushrooms mainly when I was over in Mexico. But we also had a ceremony with salvia over there, so it's used and it's known. But they prefer the mushrooms for, I don't know, some reason, historic reasons probably. But no, salvia is fine. You can use it there. And in fact, you can use it in most states of America as well.
Oh, really?
But state by state. State by state, they're beginning to outlaw it. But in some places you can still use it, yeah.
Well, I know that from what I know about plants and shamanism, one of the biggest uses for plants of any kind is their hallucinogenic value for a vision quest.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we call it hallucinogenic, but strictly that's not what these plants do. Somebody coined a term actually in the 1950s, I think it was. They refer to these plants as entheogenic. The translation of that is something like it reveals the God or the sacred nature of yourself, what is already within you. Because an hallucination implies there's something out there which isn't real that you're seeing because of these plants. But actually, most of these plants take you into yourself, and the visions you see are all the kind of, the crap and the junk that you're carrying. But that now you can see it, now it's exposed. So it's not something which is invented by the plant, something which doesn't actually exist. It's something which exists within you. But you just can't see it at the moment, and that's why you need the plant in order to see it, because that's the root of your illness.
So it's really more of an enhancer than an actual inhibitor.
Yeah, I mean, you can't hallucinate anything. You can't see anything which doesn't actually exist somewhere within you, which you haven't got the capacity to see. You know what I mean? So, well, we don't invent things when we drink these plants. In the correct context, we use them to see what is already within us causing us problems, but which is hidden from us in normal everyday awareness. So yeah, it's an enhancer, yeah. But also, you could argue it's an inhibitor to the brain because, a lot of psychologists and some scientists reckon now that the brain as a vessel is actually capable of knowing everything that ever was, everything that's going on right now in every part of the world, everything that can ever be. It's an organ which is in tune with the energies, and they're the same energies which, make up the stars in space, as make up the human body, as make up the house that you're sitting in. And the brain is capable of tuning into these. But in everyday reality, we don't, of course, because, knowing what's going on Mars in 5,000 years ago isn't going to get you across the road safely, So the brain inhibits a lot of information, and what these plants do is bypasses that gating function. So now you're more aware of stuff which is around you and you would normally perceive, except that the brain cuts it out. So you see, these hallucinations are the reality which already exists around us, but most of the time we just can't see it. So in a sense, it does both things, It inhibits that part of the brain which isn't useful for us in these moments, and it enhances our natural psychic abilities, I suppose you would call them. So they're great teachers all around. They show you things, open the doors to perception, is the way that Huxley talks about it, Aldous Huxley. They show you things which are real that you need to see, that normally you can't see, that's what they do.
Now, I was given to understand that mushrooms, or at least some mushrooms, did the same thing.
Yeah, mushrooms can, yeah. In fact, the ceremonies I went to in Mexico, the mushrooms they use aren't incredibly strong because they use them as part of an entire ceremony which may go on for 6 hours, which is a healing event in itself. So one aspect of that is to take some mushrooms just to kind of get you in the mood, I suppose, to loosen you up a little bit so the healing can be more effective. But I was born and raised on the borders of Wales in the UK, which is known for its mushrooms. Worldwide, we're kind of regarded as having some of the strongest and the best mushrooms there. So my earliest and some of my first experiences were with magic mushrooms in Wales. And they can certainly, open you up and show you the truth of things. So in fact, actually, part of my work in Mexico was to research how the shamans there run ceremonies, because it's my intention to start working again with mushrooms in ceremony in this country where I am now. So for next year, we'll be running mushroom ceremonies here, but the mushrooms will be a whole lot stronger than they use them in Mexico.
Okay. Now, I got to ask you, just out of curiosity, what was it that got you interested in writing about this here particular plant?
In Salvia.
Right.
Well, it's a bit of a story. I owned a healing center in Peru where we worked primarily with this feature plant called ayahuasca, which is a vine that grows in the jungle there. But I'd gone down, just confused things a little bit. One of the reasons for me buying this healing center and working down there was to be in Peru so that I could work with another plant, which I've worked with for years, which I regard as probably my first and my primary teacher, which is a mescaline cactus called San Pedro. So I was going through this process of working with it, process called dieting. Essentially, it's a kind of a meditative fast that you do for a period of time. So there's a whole lot of foods that you don't eat, a whole lot of activities that you don't do. But every day, just about, and it felt like, I would drink San Pedro, this mescaline cactus, and be involved in its teaching. And one of the things that it told me was to begin dieting a lot of other plants as well. Now, some of them we wouldn't regard as hallucinogenic, but they're healing plants as well, like tobacco was one of them. Another jungle plant called Makura, which the shamans there use for exorcisms and to get rid of witchcraft and brujeria. And a whole bunch of plants like that. And this other one that came up was salvia, which is unusual because it grows in Mexico, not Peru. And it's not known as a particular plant that you would diet in Peru. But because San Pedro had told me to do it, I took it on trust and I began working with salvia. And what I found with salvia was it was so mind-blowingly different and so intense that I had to do a prolonged study with it. So I actually worked with that plant for 3 years or more before I wrote that book, working with it almost alongside San Pedro. So I was there to work with San Pedro, but salvia almost kind of overtook or ran alongside the process. And the things that you learn from salvia are incredible. I mean, some people regard salvia as 200 times stronger than LSD or 20 times stronger than DMT, and it's certainly a really intense experience, but it seems to be the plant teacher of our time, because what it talks about is the new science, if you like. I mean, quantum physics now is regarded as the cutting edge of science. And we talk of string theory and multiverses, and the idea that human beings are part of a computer simulation now is one of the kind of crazy ideas of quantum physics. And that doesn't go far enough. That's where kind of science comes to a halt and the mysteries continue afterwards. But salvia takes you right into the mysteries that lie beyond quantum physics. So it's really the plant of the moment. You know, it's a scientist as much as a shaman, this plant. And, you know, some of the mysteries that are out there, some of the things that are taught, time travel, for instance, is one of the characteristics of salvia. And I had a guy on a course out here in Spain a few years ago who smoked salvia with me in ceremony as part of a group. And he actually did time travel, you know, practically, in reality, he time traveled. And I'll tell you the story, if you want me to.
Sure.
He'd spoke salvia in ceremony. We had 14 people there, working with salvia. And salvia is a small trip. It's maybe, 20 minutes or something like that. So it's not like an LSD journey. But those 20 minutes are very intense because you will find yourself in a reality on that journey, which is just as real as the reality you've left. You know, you could be sitting in the room you're sitting in now, having smoked salvia. You wouldn't know the difference. You would, the room would be as real as it is in normal consciousness for you. But it's a 20-minute trip. So he did that, and then he went to his room afterwards, and now he's back to normal reality. He's writing about his experiences during the journey. And it got to be dawn because he was writing all night. There was so much material to write down. And he said, and he looked up at one point and saw the dawn was breaking through the window, so it was getting light. And he heard the cockerel crow next door because we live on a farm. And then he went back to writing his journal, so he looked down again. He looked up again some minutes later, and it was dark again outside. And then it started to get light for the first time, well, essentially for the second time, and the cock next door crowed again. Right? So he'd actually been through the dawn twice. And the salvia that was still in him said, and that's how easy time travel is. And what he didn't know was interesting, because my participants don't have newspapers or television, nothing to distract them. But I had a TV in my room, and that was 2 days before he had that trip was when at CERN, the Hadron Collider, they smashed a couple of particles together and come up with what they called the God particle, the one that can move faster than time. So it blows, Einstein's previous equation out of the window that nothing can move faster than the speed of light. So now they found a particle that can, which means time travel is possible. And, again, these particles, they're not something out there. They're the same particles that you are made from. So what Salvia had told this guy is time travel is possible and it comes from within yourself. And what the Hadron Collider had proved a couple of days before is, time travel is possible and it comes from the same particles that we're created from. So it is possible within ourselves. Just physics looks at it in a different perspective to shamanism, but we're talking the same language now through Salvia.
Kind of like calling the prophecy particles?
Yeah. But the warning from Salvia was time travel's possible. You can do it right now, but human beings need to learn to walk before they can run, because the speed of change is happening so quickly now, that we're going to find ourselves capable of all sorts of things. And the new dimensions that we enter are going to be nothing like the old paradigm. It's going to, shock the crap out of some people where this new physics leads us. And I think Salvia is kind of here to prepare us for that, almost, to show us what it's like in these other realities. It's a bit like the film 2001, the very end sequence of that, where the guy finds himself in the room and dies and is reborn, and that cycle continues. That's what we're going to find in outer space. It's not going to be clunky machines and colonizing Mars and all that mechanical stuff that we human beings are so good of. We are going to find ourselves in totally different realities. And I think Salvia is here to help us make that leap of intellect, to prepare us for that. So I think that's where it's going for us and with the plant too.
Makes sense. So, is Mexico the primary place that this plant is indigenous to, or does it grow in other parts of the world as well?
Well, that again is a mystery, because it seems that plant has only been known to the shamans of Mexico. Shamans, plant shamans, are expert botanists. They know the plants of the area, they know what they can heal, and they rely on those for healing all sorts of physical conditions. So they really know the plants in the forest. Salvia seems to have just arrived there one day, and the shamans don't seem to have had much of a history with it up until about maybe even 50 years ago. So they don't know where it came from, how it arrived. They don't know what it does, even how it got there. And even botanists don't seem to have found the parent species for it. If it's a hybrid, what are the plants that created it and how? Nobody knows. And if it was made, if it was deliberately cultivated and created in that way, nobody, the shamans or the scientists, know who did it or how it came to be or why. So there's a whole bunch of mysteries with it. And a lot of people are saying, in all seriousness, and I guess I'd be one of them, that this is a plant which has been given to us by an alien, and I mean extraterrestrial, intelligence in order to prepare us for where we're going to go next in our evolution as a species.
Because I take it you say that because of its late arrival?
Because of its late arrival, because nobody knows how it's created or where it came from. Because you asked the question, is it indigenous to Mexico?
Right.
And yeah, the particular area of Mexico where it grows, where it's known to grow, and the shamans now work with it. But it wasn't particularly well known outside of that area, and it's very, very difficult to grow because it doesn't seed. You have to take cuttings and deliberately plant it and look after it and care for it until it starts to grow. But it's spreading. You'll find it in areas of America as well. And I dare say I haven't looked for it, but I'm guessing because the conditions aren't so dissimilar over here in Spain to Mexico that we might find it here as well. But how the hell it got here or to Mexico, nobody seems to know. And you know, the people like Leary and John Lilly and Terence McKenna, the great pioneers of working with plants, they came to the conclusion through the various plants that they work with that these were forms of alien communication, ways of preparing the human species for where we need to evolve to, ways of teaching us. And if you think about it, you know, what we do with SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, is we're clunky as human beings. You know, we beam a radio beam into space and hope that an alien gets it. But if we're dealing with a more advanced species, man, we're not going to be dealing with radio waves and satellites. You know, quantum physics teaches us that the fastest way of communicating through 2 points is a change in consciousness. You know, the observer effect, the experimenter being part of the experiment. If we are dealing with an advanced species, technologically more advanced than us, and space even, they're not going to be using radio signals and satellite dishes and all that old stuff. That's really old tech, you know. They are going to be dealing in a consciousness to consciousness, communicative way. And the fastest way of expanding consciousness is through plants like salvia. And they contain the essence of the teaching themselves. And I'm sure these more advanced civilizations would wish us to know if we're ever going to be able to communicate with them on their level. And, you know, that seems to be what these plants do. Mushrooms and San Pedro and salvia and ayahuasca is, and I don't want to sound too new age or dolphin fancying or ridiculous about this, but they do seem to expand consciousness, or at least give us more creative ideas than the normal dull reality we occupy.
Kind of
which is what we're going to need.
your ESP that you're already born with?
Yeah. That kind of thing. I mean, so much of our brain is not used anyway, so what the hell is it there for? It's there, perhaps, as a container for information we can't normally access, which the plants can help us to do, or as a receptacle for the new information which is going to flood into us when we start dealing on a really conscious level with alternative dimensions, you know, what's going on with the civilizations that clearly also exist in this universe, which we may or may not have had some contact with, but, you know, likely that's going to increase in the future, and we need to be able to relate to these different species in a whole new way. We can't do that with the ape brain that we normally carry around with us. You know, we're going to have to start thinking in a different way, multi-dimensionally, not just the few dimensions we subscribe to in everyday reality.
Okay. Now, was there anything in the book that you wanted to make sure the listeners knew about that the book covered?
Well, I think it's all there in the book. I mean, the book is really the story of my work with salvia initially for about 3 years of, you know, smoking it and dieting it and drinking it and chewing the leaves and really getting to know the spirit or the essence of the plant and its teachings. But then in latter years, I expanded the research to work with groups of students. I'd be running workshops with, 15 or so people at a time, each of them working with salvia as well. And I wouldn't tell them anything about salvia because that could just have been my opinion at that stage. I would ask them, to find the essence of the plant itself and what it was teaching them. And the book is a recording of that research. And at the end of the book, there's a whole lot of, I call them themes, teaching themes which tend to emerge with salvia, which all these people consistently would say they'd experienced during the journey as well. So it's a sort of a guidebook, really, a starter for people who want to work with salvia. And it doesn't mean that even my research with, certainly a few hundred people is the absolute gospel on salvia. But it gives some people, somewhere to start if they're going to work with salvia themselves. Because it is such a strange journey that you go on that people can end up very confused, even afraid of what they discover about themselves and the universe with salvia. So to know that somebody else has been there first and giving them some clues as to what those things they're seeing may mean for them, can be a useful start. It can also be a comfort. But there's a lot more to be known with salvia, and our research with it continues as well. So I would suggest to people that, like everything else, you need to try it for yourself, really, and form your own opinion. Don't get caught up too much in what I've said about things, but it may be a starting point for you. But also, I would say never work with salvia alone. You can probably get an extract that you can smoke in a pipe or a vaporizer or something fairly easily, but don't. Don't do it by yourself. Always have somebody there watching you, because the reality you enter is so real. Often you will try and move around within it, interact with it. And so you'll literally be involuntarily moving across the floor. And of course, that means you can fall over furniture or bang your head up a wall or anything like that. So, always have somebody there with you, but, you're not going to learn about this stuff unless you get out there and do it for yourself. So I'd encourage anybody to expand the research, and, if they want to as well, get in touch with me. There's more books to be written on salvia, and I'd like to include other people's experiences and encounters as well.
The main thing is to make sure you're doing it in a legal environment, in other words.
Well, that's not the main thing to me. I think rules are for fools, and there are a few laws out there which are genuinely designed to protect us, designed to protect the government's revenue stream, maybe, or its control functions over the human brain and what we're allowed to do. But I tend to regard, the planet as mine because I was born on it, so no government should really impose its will on its people. It should be the other way around, right? That's your constitution, The government should serve the people, so I'm not too bothered about legalities, but if people are, well then, of course, obviously you've got to do what you feel safe and appropriate to do.
Okay. Well, a lot of people in America, they feel the same way when it comes to weed. In fact, they're just going to do it in hiding pretty much.
Well, yeah, I think trying to impose legislation and restrictions on the human brain, what you're allowed to explore within yourself and what you're allowed to think, is, the most disgraceful imposition by any government. Trying to control our actions in everyday life. You walk when the light's green, or the man says walk, and you don't walk when it's red. You might argue that, those kinds of rules perform a social function and help us in some way to stop getting killed when we're crossing the road. But if I want to explore my own brain, even if I know the substance I'm taking is harmful to me, and salvia isn't, by the way, there's been no problems identified, no side effects, anything of that nature. In fact, the research with salvia shows that most people feel a lot better long term in their everyday life, so it has a healing effect as well. But even if I'm smoking poison, that's my choice, right? It's got to be my choice, and it's my brain. I was born with it, and I don't want any government interfering with that. Thank you, even if they're doing it in the spirit of helping me, which I very much doubt.
Okay, that's very understandable. I know I probably feel the same way. I mean, it's kind of like when the church tries to save your soul from hell. Thank you for your goodwill, but it ain't none of your business.
Well, that's right. This might help, because I tend to think that, when people ask about bad trips as well, because I do a lot of ceremonial work with different plants, and that can be a question that comes up, will this plant cause me to have a bad trip? And my answer is, well, I don't know. But is there anything inherent in the plant which causes a bad trip? No. The bad trip is us. We are the bad trip. That stuff that we don't want to look at within us, which is still leaking out in our behavior and our emotions and our relationships and all that kind of stuff, all the nasties, the shadow stuff. The plants can help us to see that, because only once we've seen it can we do anything about changing it, right? So the plants have a healing intention, which is to make us more aware of ourselves, and then this stuff doesn't have to leak out and cause wars and abuse and, emotional damage and all that kind of stuff in day-to-day life. So we might see something we don't want to see, but that stuff's already in us. So no plant is going to give you a bad trip any more than the bad trip you're already experiencing.
Okay, so it sounds to me kind of like that movie Star Wars. I think it was the one where Luke was fixing to go into that one area and asked Yoda if there was anything in there to fear, and he says, only what he took in there with him, in other words.
That's right. That's exactly it, yeah. I know, I haven't watched Star Wars, by the way, I'm not particularly into those kinds of films, so I don't know Yoda's why teachings, but that is exactly right. That's exactly what we're talking about here, yeah.
Well, I used to watch it. I don't watch that stuff as much as I used to, but I couldn't remember that part. I thought that was pretty cool when I heard it.
Yeah?
Do you think this is the same kind of stuff that the prophets of the Old Testament used to use in order to foretell the future? Or similar stuff, maybe?
Probably. I think the prophets of the Old Testament were probably using a plant called acacia, which has a DMT content to it as well. And the oracles of Delphi were using some other plants as well, possibly mushrooms, but wouldn't have been salvia. But every culture has its own. Salvia is referred to as the sage of the seers. It's diviner's sage. So it has a future-seeing quality to it. It's the little things with me, I find, with salvia. I was sitting in town today, for instance, waiting for a friend of mine to come and pick me up in the car. And I was just having a coffee, and I just kind of knew, and I don't know how I knew, that she was gonna have a problem turning up because the car wouldn't work. She's got two cars, right? So she turned up 10 minutes late or something and says, you're not going to believe this, but both the cars died today. The battery went on one of them, and I don't know what's wrong with the other one, but I tried to start that, which is normally reliable, and it wouldn't go either. So both two cars, for no apparent reason, because they were fine the day before, had died. And I'm just sitting there having a cup of coffee saying, yeah, that's what I expect is going to happen. So I wasn't at all surprised when she told me. So once you've dieted salvia, and once you've got, some connection with it, it will give you information like that. So every culture will have its own plant which will perform that function. But, I imagine the Old Testament prophets were working with some plant or another, and my money would be on acacia.
Okay. Well, are there any kind of plants out there that people ought to watch out for to stay away from?
If plants of this nature, I'd be cautious with Datura. It's also known as deadly nightshade, the nightshade family, because that's a strange plant. I have dieted that plant, and I've drunk it plenty of times, but you can really get lost with that plant, and it doesn't take much. 4 leaves in a couple of liters of water. If you drink that, you can be out of this reality for 3 or 4 days, and sometimes never come back. I've seen people in Peru who've worked with Toei and just never returned from that journey at all. So, the Western way of putting it, we'd say the plant sent them crazy. But it's never, the end of the story, because there are ways of getting them back from that craziness. So they can be healed of it, but, to be lost in that place can be very difficult for people. So that's the plant. Datura, I would definitely have some cautions with.
Well, this place you're talking about, they go to, they don't come back. What, do they just kind of go into a coma?
No, they're walking around, but they're kind of like zombies. It's like, their bodies are moving, but nobody's home. The lights are out. I worked with, when I had my healing center in Peru, I had a shaman working for me who, his teacher plant was Toei, was Datura. That was one of his main allies, as he would call it. And he was just walking through town one day, and this guy that I'm talking about, zombie man, came up to him, because it's like the Toei within him and the Toei within the shaman, the plants recognized each other. And this guy came up to him and just said, help, because he'd been out of it for about 3 years or something like this, but he knew that this guy, my shaman, could help him, because the datura within both of them found each other, you know. And the way of dealing with that is to simply put this guy on a proper controlled diet with datura. So he's drinking it in a sacred way, in a measured dose. It's a bit like a homeopathic cure then, you know. So the body can readapt and the mind can come back in its proper way. And the guy can come back then to not being a zombie. But that's what it looks like with people, you know, who get lost in Toei, in Datura world, is the lights are on but nobody's home.
Sounds like somebody is using too much of it, and then it creates an imbalance, and until you regain that balance again, it won't go back to normal.
Yeah, it's like that. I mean, I've drunk Datura in ayahuasca brews plenty of times for me as well. And for me, it seems like it's just like being nagged by your mother endlessly, you know? Everything you've done wrong in your life. It's great for bringing you face to face with yourself, but the information is so fast that even before you've processed one wrongdoing you're supposed to have done and remembered it properly or thought about it, it's on to the next bit of haranguing, you know? So I can imagine it's torture being locked in that world, you know, because it's just like being told off over and over again. And luckily, when I drank it, you know, as part of ayahuasca, the journey was ended after about 6 hours, but this poor guy we're talking about, he'd been in that world for 3 years, you know. So unless you like being really nagged by your mother, I'd say be very careful with that plant, you know. And if you're going mushroom picking as well by yourself, looking for magic mushrooms, you need to be a bit careful because there are some mushroom species, even the ones that you get on your breakfast plate, you know, can be dangerous. So there are some plants out there to be wary of, but, you know, treated with proper respect and with a degree of intelligence. There's nothing out there which is going to be particularly dangerous for you at all.
Okay. Would you recommend, say, experimenting with different plants in different areas?
Yes. I would recommend experimenting with anything at all that you can get your hands on, legally or otherwise, because, you know, your life is the journey here, and surely you want the biggest experience that you can have. And that also means finding that 90% of your brain that you don't use all the time and discovering more about yourself so that you can enrich your experience of this journey that you're on. If you comply with government rules and regulations and laws constantly, you're going to be like that guy in Datura. You're just going to be a walking, legalized zombie. And you're not going to have the full experience of being a human being. So, part of the life journey, surely, is to put yourself into new experiences, new situations, sometimes, and perhaps in preference, outside of your comfort zone as well, so that you expand your experience of being alive. And I think these teacher plants in particular can only do good. I mean, they do only do good, but I think that they only can do good. I think that's their purpose here as well. You know, plants work on a number of different levels. I mean, they can heal in the kind of a way that, herbalists might prescribe them, so they're good for your body. But they can also teach you things as well because they have a particular spirit or a personality within them. So they can be your guides in everyday life if you create the right relationship with them. And, my teacher, one of my shamanic teachers, said to me one time about a plant that she works with that she realized after several years of working with it that this particular plant knows that it is a part of God. And the thing is, we are also a part of God. You know, every human being is. And I don't mean God in a Christianized sense. You know, scientists tell us that when the Big Bang happened, all the energy of the universe just spread. And it's the same energy. So if you want to call that Big Bang spread of energy God, then that's the same energy that's in me and in you, right? So we are aspects of God. But we've got this stupid, rational, literal, analyzing human brain that wants to veto everything and tell us, no, we're not, you know, we're not that special. how dare we presume to be on the same level as God? But if we don't accept that we're God, then God can't evolve either, right? Because we come here as a million pairs of eyes and ears to have an experience of life in order that when we die and return to that energy cloud, we can inform God as to what it's like to have this form on Earth. And through that, God creates more knowledge, awareness, and God evolves too, right? So that's part of our job as human beings, to be the eyes and ears of God. But our mind gets in the way of our understanding of that, and we, form religions which are out there and not part of us, and God is something else separate. And we don't get that because we don't think that we're big enough or good enough. But plants understand it because they don't have the same silly mindset that we've got. So through plants, we can begin to understand who we truly are, how big we are, how great we are. And hopefully that might help in some way to heal the world. If we all realized that we are here to do the work of God, it would get rid of all religions. It would get rid of all need for wars. There would be no differentiation because we're all the same energy. We know that from the inside. So there's no end really to the way that plants can begin to teach us, and all of it is good in the long term. Good immediately sometimes, but certainly in the long term, it's good for us.
Do you think maybe some of these plants are being delegalized because of the fact that they do open you up?
They wouldn't be delegalized because of that. The only reason they'd be delegalized is because some corporation or some government thinks they can make some money of it. So they're talking about delegalizing, or legalizing now. They're talking about legalizing cannabis, aren't they? So they can claim some tax on that. Delegalized, yeah. Sorry, I take your point. I think that's pretty much the case, yeah. Governments do not want the people to understand that the people are in control. Which plants will certainly do. Plants will raise consciousness in that way as well. And show us that there's something more fundamental and important than politics, than the things that run our everyday reality, economics and laws and politics and government and all that kind of stuff, is a game. It's just a game. It's not what human beings are here for. And some people choose to play it, or, they go vote in elections, and then they're surprised 4 years later when they've elected the same guy from different parties they just got rid of, before. Because these people are playing the game of politics. It doesn't matter whether you're blue or red. You're still a hired hand for the corporations at the end of the day, so nothing's going to change by playing that game. What's going to change things is when we all understand that we are the people, and I don't even mean this in a political sense, but we are the people with the power. Just by virtue of being human beings alive on this planet. We don't need anybody else to tell us how to behave.
That's pretty much true. You know what? I'm picking up a feedback. I mean, I can hear my own voice. Did you move your mic?
No, nothing's changed over here, man.
Oh, it must be Skype again. Sometimes Skype gets funny.
Yeah, Skype can be odd, yeah, it's probably that. I haven't changed anything.
Well, nothing's changed on my end. That's why I figure it's probably Skype. But I don't know how to fix that right here during the middle of the show. I was trying to think of something I was going to say a minute ago, and listening to myself was just messing with my mind. What was that I was trying to think of? I had a question on the tip of my tongue. I wish I hadn't heard myself. I think it's getting better now.
Yeah, I can't hear you, and I can't hear myself feeding back either. So maybe it's just your end.
My end hasn't changed, but you say you can't hear me now, or you can hear me now?
I can hear you, but I can't hear any echo or other interference.
Oh, well, I don't hear it now. I just heard it a minute ago. It might have been temporary.
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyway, back to where we were at the book. Maybe the other thing will come back to me in a minute. Here's what one thing I always like to ask everybody when it gets close to the end of a show. Are you got any other books out there you'd like to tell everybody about?
Well, yeah, I mean, I work with various plants, not just salvia. So I mentioned earlier San Pedro, which is the mescaline cactus, and ayahuasca as well, which is the Peruvian teacher vine, the vine of souls, they call it. So a lot of my books in recent years have to deal with these plants. So I have a couple of books out on San Pedro. One's called The Hummingbird's Journey to God. Another one is called Cactus of Mystery. And in addition to the book that you've read on Salvia, there's another book out on Salvia just coming out. It's called Salvia Sages Seers, I think it's called. And I've also got a book out on ayahuasca as well. So I'm kind of building up a library of books that I've written to do with specific teacher plants. So the next one I'm going to be working on will be one on magic mushrooms and some of the Mexican ceremonies that I've been through as well. So there'll be a whole bunch of these books coming out over a period of time, and some of them are out already. So, if people are interested in plant medicine and in the entheogens, the teacher plants, they might want to look those up at Amazon as well, or on my website.
And that's www.thefourgates.org. Now,
that's right.
I was going to say, have you ever thought about maybe writing one book about many different plants that have these kind of properties, and sort of like a book called The God Plant or something, or God Plants?
I thought about it, and I wrote a book, was it last year it came out, I think, called Drinking the Four Winds, which is about, do you remember I told you I had a healing center in Peru where we worked with ayahuasca, but I was also drinking this plant, San Pedro, which is how I came to be more fully involved with Salvia as well. Well, along the way, during that diet, I worked with about 12 other plants as well, all of whom are teachers in their own right. Plants like tobacco and macora and a plant called ergon satur and, a whole bunch of other ones as well. So that book, Drinking the Four Winds, is really a recapitulation of that whole experience that I undertook working with a whole lot of plants. And it's more or less a kind of an autobiographical journey, but also includes information on the plants. But when it comes to, the kind of idea you're talking about there, the God plant, it's difficult actually the more that you work with these plants independently, because they each have their own personality and they each have their own specific teachings. So to kind of take them all and say, and this is what the plants are telling us, is a bit of a difficult task, because they're telling us different things. Now, for instance, ayahuasca, for instance, this vine that I'm talking about from Peru, really only came to more mainstream awareness in about the 1950s, 1960s, with the work of the poets and the writers, Burroughs, William Burroughs and Allen Ginsberg, and then people like, Terence McKenna picking it up, and then into the counterculture. Now, people by and large know about ayahuasca. Now, ayahuasca, when you drink it, is a plant which, amongst many other things, will teach you that you are not limited to the earth, that you are a creature of the universe. It will kind of take you out there into space to look at the universe and your place within it and show you how important and powerful you are. Also, how small and unimportant you are, paradoxically, but it shows you your place in the universe. And of course, when that came to attention, we were also in the mainstream world working on the space race, right? So in terms of consciousness and what the plant was teaching us, you could say that ayahuasca, in one way or another, took us to the moon, because that moon launch came in the 60s, and that's when ayahuasca was teaching people, talking to people. Now, San Pedro, that's a plant which is about the earth and the importance of human beings, being part of the earth and treating everything as sacred and having a spirit to it. And that came to mainstream awareness in the 1980s, which also happened to correspond with the birth, the mainstream birth of the environmental movement and green politics, that kind of stuff. So you could say that the way that affected us was to teach us that the earth is important and we are part of that. We ought to recognize our place and take care of our planet. And now Salvia, Salvia really only came to mainstream awareness in the mid-1990s. And as I said before, that seems to be about quantum physics and the movement to new dimensions and time travel and all of this stuff which science is now proving to be the case. The scientists talk about a minimum of 11 dimensions existing around us right now. In the room that we're sitting in, there are 11 dimensions at least. Some talk about multiverses. Millions and millions and millions of different dimensions of universes existing right in this room right now. And that's the kind of mind-boggling stuff that Salvia takes us into, which is why I talked about these plants preparing us for what's to come, but also in some ways influencing what is to come through human action, human consciousness. So it's kind of difficult to say, well, this is the message of all of the plants combined. Because they're all talking different things. But I suppose if you have to say one thing, all the plants are telling us there is more to being human than we have so far understood about the human condition. And we are bigger, more powerful, more important, more intelligent, more capable than we've been led to believe by people like our governments and our school teachers. But on the other hand, we have to be humble with that because we're no more important or intelligent or worthy than a plant growing in the soil or, a house brick even. We're all of the same energy and all of the same essence, which means we're all brothers and sisters here sharing this experience. That's the fundamental teaching of the plants, but they teach in different ways. And these are practical teachings, I said, they took us to the moon. They helped us start caring about the earth, and maybe in some way they're informing our quantum physicists now about these other dimensions which are around us, which we have yet to discover, which no doubt exists out there. They have to, for the world to even work.
So does these plants each have their own kind of like unique journey?
Yeah, they differ. Yeah. I mean, somebody who drunk ayahuasca, for instance, will have maybe a 4 or 5 hour journey where they will be out there, out of themselves. And that's quite liberating, because you then see other aspects of yourself because you've got some distance on it so you can see your own processes and work to heal them. You also see your place in the universe, as I've said. And that's quite a long journey, and moments of it can be intense, other moments can be blissfully quiet. I love it when I'm running ceremonies, actually, because to begin with, there can be some, initial agitation, which lasts for maybe 20 minutes or half an hour or something. People settling into the experience sometimes coming up against issues and having to work through them. So there can be a bit of anxiety and a sort of a jagged energy in the room. But after that, you tend to hear these kind of just blissful sighs, as people relax into the experience and, get washed with good feelings and good vibes, and that's when the healing's taking place. So it has a, process of its own. Whereas something like Salvia, as I said, it's a really quick journey, maybe 10 minutes or 20 minutes. Highly intense. You won't know what reality you're in or the reality, you forget the reality you've just left. A lot of people, if they can speak at all during a Salvia ceremony, will say things like, who am I? What's going on? Not where am I, who am I? They have lost all sort of sense of their own conditioning into self, because it's a life story that we tell ourselves.
Kind of like,
say to participants,
disassociation from their ego?
Well, when I say to participants sometimes, if I've got a 35-year-old guy sitting in front of me and I ask him to tell me about himself, I'm asking for his life story. And in reality, if he really wanted to tell me, I'd be sat there for 35 years, right? And he told me moment by moment what had happened in his life. But if I ask you, I don't know how old you are, but if I ask you to tell me your life story, you can probably do it in 2 minutes. Because you're picking moments from your life experience to put together to make a creation of you. That's yourself, that's the thing that we identify with. And when you smoke salvia, that all goes away. You have no clue at all who you are. And some people find that, they can produce anxiety. They find it disconcerting. But the thing is, if you've got into that ceremony thinking, I'm a person who's ill, I'm going to die, I've got a cancer or AIDS or a brain tumor or something like that, that, in a way, is also part of your story. I'm not, trying to decry it or belittle it or something. I'm saying that emotions and a sense of self and our psychology and all that sort of thing contribute to our ill health. And if in that moment you realize there is no me, I've invented the whole thing, including these illnesses which I believe myself to have, then that gives you, it's like wiping the slate clean, that gives you an amazing opportunity to heal yourself then, because you can change the story. And that's what I find with, a lot of people who come to ceremonies with me, is they change the story. And, the Western medicine, or most people, I think, even the shaman that I work with, calls these things miracle healings take place. So we've cured people of lymphatic cancers, of brain tumors, of breast cancers, of emotional problems like addictions and guilt and anxiety and irritable bowel and ME, and, the list goes on, with one drink of these plants sometimes, because they come out the other end of it realizing that it's a story and there's no need for them to be ill. And as simply as that, they're cured, So if you can get into that way of thinking that you've invented yourself and now all you're asked to do is reinvent yourself for your own good, that's where the healing comes. So it's not a miracle cure, because there is no such thing as a miracle. Anything that happens within nature, within you, within the world that we occupy, is by definition quite natural, because we're living in the natural world. So you don't even need to go looking for a miracle. You just open yourself to accepting the fact that these things are possible and you will be healed through this medicine. And guess what? People are. We see it all the time.
Okay. Now, you got any recommendations for, like, people who live here in America, how they could get a hold of something like that if they wanted to?
Salvia, you should be able to get it pretty easily depending on the state that you live in. Because you'll find websites, some botanical services and head shops, that kind of thing, who can still legally sell you salvia. So just do a web search for salvia. I'm sure something will come up. Some states, as I say, in America, have now made it illegal, but not every state. So you can still, if you want it bad enough, you'll get it. There's nothing going to stop you if you really want this healing.
Okay, then. You got any last minute thoughts for the listeners?
Work with the plants. I used to work in pharmaceuticals at one point, believe it or not. I used to be a marketing consultant for pharmaceutical companies, and I had to leave it. I had to leave it and go down to Peru and drink ayahuasca, because I realized, and I tried to keep it hidden from myself, and I think many doctors and many people who work for pharmaceutical companies do, but we're actually selling death. That was my job. Most pharmaceutical, unnatural, chemical medicines are taken from healing plants, but you can't patent the healing plant, so it has to be processed in some way, which makes it less than effective, and also in some ways dangerous to the human system as well. And we withhold, or were withholding, the true medicine, the plants themselves. So I know a couple of plants. I knew even then, a couple of plants in Peru. One called Ergon Sacha, one called Una de Gato. If you drink those for 6 months in combination, it eradicates the AIDS virus from the body. I'm not saying, it manages the condition or something, but you still feel a bit poorly. When you're blood tested, there is no AIDS virus in you. There's no money in that for a pharmaceutical company. So I was selling AIDS management drugs, which didn't cure the AIDS, but helped people feel a little bit better, so they keep coming back for some more, paying $100 a time. And, I tried to convince myself I was doing some good. Possibly I was, but I was also killing people. Those people who could have lived and thrived without the virus in their body just by drinking these two plants you get free if you go to Peru. And so I know that pharmaceutical medicines are a con. They're designed to keep you dependent. You know, they want the customer coming back, and for that they have to keep you ill. So pharmaceuticals aren't there to cure you, they're to keep you a loyal customer until the day you die, and you will. And a lot of them have side effects as well. But plants are healers. Plants will happily heal you for nothing. Just pick the right ones. Just know something about the plants. And take some responsibility for your own healing as well. Don't keep going to the doctor asking them to prescribe you some pills at £1,000 a pop. Take responsibility for yourself. Educate yourself. That way you get ill. That way you get better. The minute you give away your power to a doctor or a pharmaceutical company and ask them to cure you, is the moment you commit yourself to the slow road towards death. Because that's the business that they're in. You know, I was in that business too, of keeping people barely alive, zombified out of their brains on my Xanax and Prozac. Compliant human beings dependent on the system. But the plants are there to heal you, and you've every right, because you are a live human being on the planet, to work with these energies that want to help you. So, you know, do some research for yourself, take responsibility for your own health, search for the plants. It's not difficult these days with the internet. You know, have a look at the plants that can heal you. For God's sake and your own sake, leave the pharmaceutical meds alone, because that is a road to death. We need to rethink on all this medicine. Plants are the first medicine, and they're the real healers. The stuff you get from the doctor is not. Seriously.
Yeah, I think it also shows that when they make some of this stuff illegal, it's a sign to keep you from getting well, in other words.
Well, you know, if you think about this logically, most pharmaceutical companies are corporations, right? They have shareholders, they have boards of directors. If I told you that cancer can be cured fairly easily, in fact, cancer is not a difficult problem to cure. I've done it many times with the plants that I give to people. But cancer can be cured through sometimes one drink of a particular plant. But AIDS can be cured in this way I've just described you with these two particular plants. And that gets out into the world, or, you know, pharmaceutical companies started promoting these plants. Well, you know, they'd be out of business tomorrow. The shareholders would shoot the board of directors. The board of directors would be out of a job, you know. They're in the business of making money, of course, because they're a company, right? So how is it in their interest to make you well? It's not. You know, they don't want you to die because they lose business that way too, you know, my cynical self says. But they don't want you getting better either. They want you somewhere in this zombified middle ground of feeling a little less unwell, but still ill enough that you need to go back to the doctor to get your prescription refilled, right? That way they make money and everybody's happy. If that's the kind of, you know, medical process you want to subscribe to and take part in. But you could be well tomorrow. You could have no cancer left in your body tomorrow. You could have no AIDS left in your body in 6 months' time, you know? You could be that free if you wanted to, but it's no pharmaceutical company is going to give you that information or that pill, for sure.
Alrighty then. At that, I shall be topped off the hour. I would like to thank everybody for listening in and invite y'all to come to my show this Wednesday night at 7 p.m. We'll be talking to Margaret DeWise, and her book is going to be Ecstatic Healing, and I'd love to have everybody here. It's a journey into the shamanic world of spirit possession and miraculous medicine. So everybody tune in Wednesday night. And for those of y'all that didn't make the show live, it will be archived at YouTube and here on my site. And half of it will be archived over at Daily Motion. And I want to thank you for being my guest, Ross. And hopefully when you get another book out in the future or have something else you want to share, you'll give me a call and we can get you back in here to talk again.
Yeah, I love to. It's always nice talking about the plants. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for being on the show. We'll talk to you later. Goodbye, everybody. Y'all have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
the energies, and they're the same energies which, make up the stars in space, as make up the human body, as make up the house that you're sitting in. And the brain is capable of tuning into these. But in everyday reality, we don't, of course, because, knowing what's going on Mars in 5,000 years ago isn't going to get you across the road safely, So the brain inhibits a lot of information, and what these plants do is bypasses that gating function. So now you're more aware of stuff which is around you and you would normally perceive, except that the brain cuts it out. So you see, these hallucinations are the reality which already exists around us, but most of the time we just can't see it. So in a sense, it does both things, It inhibits that part of the brain which isn't useful for us in these moments, and it enhances our natural psychic abilities, I suppose you would call them. So they're great teachers all around. They show you things, open the doors to perception, is the way that Huxley talks about it, Aldous Huxley. They show you things which are real that you need to see, that normally you can't see, that's what they do.
Now, I was given to understand that, mushrooms, or at least some mushrooms, did the same thing.
Yeah, mushrooms can, yeah. In fact, the ceremonies I went to in Mexico, the mushrooms they use aren't incredibly strong because they use them as part of an entire ceremony which may go on for 6 hours, which is a healing event in itself. So one aspect of that is to take some mushrooms just to kind of get you in the mood, I suppose, to loosen you up a little bit so the healing can be more effective. But somebody coined a term actually in the 1950s, I think it was. They refer to these plants as entheogenic. The translation of that is something like, it reveals the God or the sacred nature of yourself, what is already within you. Because an hallucination implies there's something out there which isn't real that you're seeing because of these plants. But actually, most of these plants take you into yourself, and the visions you see are all the kind of, the crap and the junk that you're carrying. But that now you can see it, now it's exposed. So it's not something which is invented by the plant, something which doesn't actually exist. It's something which exists within you. But you just can't see it at the moment, and that's why you need the plant in order to see it, because that's the root of your illness.
So it's really more of an enhancer than an actual inhibitor.
Yeah, I mean, you can't hallucinate anything. You can't see anything which doesn't actually exist somewhere within you, which you haven't got the capacity to see. You know what I mean? So, we don't invent things when we drink these plants. In the correct context, we use them to see what is already within us causing us problems, but which is hidden from us in normal, everyday awareness. So yeah, it's an enhancer, yeah. But also, you could argue it's an inhibitor to the brain because, a lot of psychologists and some scientists reckon now that the brain as a vessel is actually capable of knowing everything that ever was, everything that's going on right now in every part of the world, everything that can ever be. It's an organ which is in tune with...
I had not heard of that before, but while reading the description, I come to discover that this is a form of plant. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's actually part of the mint family, but the shamans who use it refer to it as sage. But it's not. It's part of the mint family, and it grows in a particular part of Mexico where I was just a couple of months ago in ceremonies there with the plant. And I suppose, we in the West would say it's a hallucinogenic plant. But it's a visionary plant, really. It's a medicine plant. And like other plants, like San Pedro or ayahuasca, it will help to open you up to, I don't know, let's say greater awareness, at least a greater understanding of yourself and why you might have an illness. Because, I can go on, the Western approach to medicine is they give you a tablet to cure the symptoms of what is wrong with you, or, claim to cure the symptoms. Half the time they don't. But they don't really get to the root cause of the problem. Now, a plant like salvia can cure the symptoms of whatever it is that you might have a problem with, and it's known to be good for things like addictions and some brain disorders and some forms of cancer and AIDS as well. There's a lot of targets for it, medical targets. But it's also a teacher plant. So it can show you what it was that caused you to get ill in the first place. Because these things are hardly ever just physical breakdowns. They usually also have a mental or an emotional component as well. And unless you get to the bottom of that, you're just going to get ill again. So it's a plant that's been used for a long time among the shamans of Mexico for healing on all sorts of levels. That's what it is.
Okay, so is it still used today, or has that been kind of outlawed like it is here in America?
No, most places in the world are a lot more sensible and wise than America. I'm over here in Spain, as I said, and ayahuasca, which is a jungle vine, a different plant, is illegal or going that way in most parts of the world. It's certainly illegal in America and Australia. But over here, there was a test case just last year, actually, where they wanted to prosecute somebody who had this particular form of medicine, and it went to court, and the judge said, no way, we're throwing it out. So ayahuasca over here is quite legal, and so are the other plants as well. In Mexico, no, salvia is regarded as a great teacher plant. It's a sacred plant, so it's almost a protected species over there. But the shamans, funny enough, don't use it that much. Actually, they prefer mushrooms. Psilocybin mushrooms. The Mexican version of that. That's their main healing plant. So I was in ceremonies with mushrooms mainly when I was over in Mexico. But we also had a ceremony with salvia over there, so it's used and it's known. But they prefer the mushrooms for, I don't know, some reason, historic reasons probably. But no, salvia is fine. You can use it there. And in fact, you can use it in most states of America as well.
Oh, really?
But state by state, they're beginning to outlaw it. But in some places you can still use it, yeah.
Well, I know that from what I know about plants and shamanism, one of the biggest uses for plants of any kind is their hallucinogenic value for a vision quest.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we call it hallucinogenic, but strictly that's not what these plants do.
For authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. Listeners, we're no topic is taboo. Listener-supported radio, and with your help, it will stay that way. And today, my name's Royce, the Redneck Radio Man. Pardon me, folks. My mind got a little blown right before the show, and now I'm sticking my foot in it. But getting down to the part of the show here. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Ross Heaven, and we're going to be discussing his book, Shamanic Quest for the Spirit of Salvia. But before we get involved into this here, I'd like to remind everybody, if you'd like to ask questions, the call-in numbers 832-632-7904. And also, if you want to learn more about Ross and his books or his book, you can go to www.thefourgates.org. So, Ross, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, thanks. Yeah, I'm over here in Spain at the moment. We got some workshops starting with plant medicines in about a week's time, so I'm just kicking back and taking it easy for a week. I've got some paella on the oven cooking, and I got a glass of beer in front of me, so I'm good to go.
Okay. Well, listen, I got to tell you, that was kind of a unique title on your book when I saw it, Spirit of Salvia.